Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the International Association of Woodcarvers, where woodcarvers are helping woodcarvers. Today is March the 12th, a little bit after 3 p.m. We appreciate you all taking time out today on this cold, late spring or late winter, early spring day. I know we were talking there a few minutes ago, and people all over the United States at least have snow, and I know people up in Canada do. So thank you for taking time out and coming in, meeting up with us today. Today on our meeting, we've got Roger Beane that's coming on with us from Oskaloosa, Iowa. Roger's going to be talking to us about carving spools and other things that are wooden. He'll be coming on here in a few minutes to do a demonstration. First thing I'm going to talk about is we're going to do an auction during this meeting like we've done in the past. We've had Helvie Knives. So today we're going to be auctioning this knife. It's a Green Hornet with a Floyd Radigan handle, 2-inch blade, 3.5-inch handle. So if you're interested in this knife, again, it was donated by Helvie, and we'll go ahead and start taking bids on that in the chat if you want to start putting those over in the chat. We'll run that the full meeting, and at the end of the meeting, we'll call that, and the highest bidder will need to stay on the meeting so that we can get your information at the end. Want to remind you all about some of the workshops that's going on. Dave Stetson's class started today. For all you all who was in the class and are joining us, thanks for coming over from the class. I was in there earlier today, and it's a great class. So thanks for joining us after the class each week. Janet Cordell is going to have a class on May the 9th, carving bighorn sheep. If you're interested in that class, make sure you reach out to Janet and get signed up for that. Also wanted to remind you all there's some shows that are coming up. It's getting that time of the year where we're going to start having some shows in different parts of the United States, at least I know of. March 4th and 5th, well, we just had that, the Miami Valley Woodcarver Show. March 12th and 13th, which is this weekend, the Lancaster County Show up in Pennsylvania. March 18th through the 20th is the Ohio Decoy Show. March 26th and 27th is the New York Woodcarver Showcase. April the 1st through the 3rd, there's the Charlotte Woodcarver Showcase. I'll be down at that show. In June, on June 10th and 11th, the Manola, Texas League of the Arts Show. And then, as I've talked about in the past, CCA is going to have a show in September, on September 24th and 25th. Carving the Rockies, you can go out and check that show out on their website, Caricature Carvers of America. Make sure you check that out and try to get signed up for that if you're interested in going to that. Want to remind you all we have a new newsletter. We're going to be putting that information over in the chat as well. If you're interested in signing up for the newsletter, make sure you go out and do that. We'll be releasing that again on April the 1st. You can also go out there and click on Buy Me a Coffee if you want to support the International Association of Woodcarvers. Make sure you click on that link and click on Buy Me a Coffee, and you can donate there. All of our meetings are out on YouTube. I'll remind you of that. So make sure you go out and like and subscribe there. If there's past meetings that you want to go out and check out, they're out there on YouTube. There's a lot of free instructions. So make sure you take advantage of that benefit. Again, we're trying to get as many people involved in carving as we can. We offer up these resources so that people can go out and learn and get involved and kind of know where they need to get supplies and that kind of thing. And to introduce them to new carvers or other carvers that they may not be aware of. So make sure you share this opportunity with other carvers and have them go out and check out our meetings. Having said all that, I'm going to go ahead and turn the meeting over to Roger Beane. Again, Roger's coming to us from Oskaloosa, Iowa. He's going to talk to us about carving spools and other wooden things, and I think he's going to do a demonstration as well. So, Roger, thanks for coming on today, and I'll go ahead and turn this over to you.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that, and like I said before, that I really appreciate all the time and effort that you and Thom and you're on provide, because it's such a good resource for people to go to and get new techniques, contact people that maybe you've never ever seen carve before. So I think that's, for you guys, it's a wonderful collection or library of material for any carver, whether it's a beginning or advanced carver. What I plan on doing is tell you a little bit about myself, and then carve a little bit on a spool, and then show you some of the other wooden stuff that I've carved before. And so to tell you about myself, I taught junior high science and health for about 40 years up in Northeast Iowa. And then I moved down to Central Iowa where my grandkids were at. And we've lived here for 8 years. And it's been a interesting experience to change from the northern part of Iowa to the central part. And, you know, some people I realize probably don't realize where Iowa's at. And it's a very scenic place. If you, most people, I think, get acquainted with Iowa with Interstate 80. They're going about 80 miles an hour. And then on either side of it, you'll see corn and beans and quite a few wind turbines. And so that's, I think a lot of people associate that with Iowa, but we're right in the middle of the United States. And a lot of people do go through to get to someplace else. And right, so like all of you, we've got a little bit of snow, but it's supposed to be warmer tomorrow. So we're looking forward to that. How I got started wood carving, I was working on my master's in health education down in Missouri at Kirksville. And the roommate who was carving on a wooden shoe, and I said, geez, I'd kind of like to learn how to do that. So he cut out a blank and he said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll carve on one half, and I'll give it to you, and you do look what I did, and you carve on the other half. And so this is the first thing that I did, was a wooden shoe that he carved half and I carved the other half. And so that's how I got started. And there was I had done taxidermy for about 10 years. So I thought maybe I would do bird carving, because I stuffed a lot of birds and stuff. And I did one feather, and that was okay. Then I started to do a bird, and so you gotta carve it, and then you do the texture, and then you burn it, and then you paint it, and then you do all the scenery and everything. And I said, you know, this is not a lot of fun, and for me. And so I ended up, my first instructor was Harley Refsel, the flat plane. Such a great guy, great teacher. And I liked it a lot. And I took quite a few classes from him. He was up in Decorah, Iowa, which is in the real northeast part of Iowa. And if you ever get a chance, his books are good. Or if you ever get a chance to take a class from him, he's really good. And so I started off with Harley Refsel. And I wanted to put a little bit more detail into the faces than the flat plane. And so my second instructor that I took was a guy named Harold Enlow. And I tell you what, I was just amazed at what he could do with a knife, and such a nice guy. And so I again took quite a few classes from him, and I really enjoyed it. And I guess if you ever get a chance, I don't know if he's teaching much anymore, but he's a great instructor. And then the next one I took a class from was Marv Kaisersat. And I ended up going up to Faribault quite a few times, and we got to be good friends. And to me, he's probably one of the best carvers, because he can create such unusual scenes out of one block of wood and then get it done. I mean, a lot of people can create the idea in their mind, but Marv can get it done. And he's, if you ever get a chance to go up there in his work area, his, what he calls his Aka Museum, get a chance to go up there. It's just fantastic. He has all kinds of carvings up there. And so again, I think he's still maybe doing one class in July, I'm not sure, but fantastic guy and fantastic carver. The next people that again, I've taken a lot of different people, and I really appreciate all the time people have taken to give classes and share their expertise. And if I were to mention all of them, we could probably use all this whole hour to mention all the people that I've taken classes from. But a lot of them that I've taken quite a few classes from repeatedly would be like PJ Driscoll and Bruce Ankeny and Mike Shipley and Rick Weatherby and Chris Hammock. And I said that with PJ, I said, geez, if I can do this, you should be able to do this. He said, okay. So I'm doing this now. So in the future, you can look to see PJ giving a talk. I think you'd really enjoy hearing what PJ carves and what he does. So look forward to that. The other thing is the Zoom classes. I don't know if any of you have taken any of them. I have taken 3. And to me, they are some of the best things you can do, just because when you think of when you go to a workshop, you may spend maybe a half an hour in the morning with the instructor. Whereas with a Zoom, you'll spend 2 hours in one day. And then you can get two more weeks after that to look at the video. And I think it's, to me, good because the instructor doesn't have to leave. They can teach more students. The teacher doesn't have to leave. And the other thing is the fact that, I guess the thing I like is that you have to do the carving. You know, the instructor doesn't have to carve 1,000 eyes. You have to learn how to carve eyes. And so I think that's one thing good about the Zoom class is that when I taught school, my philosophy was you learn by doing. And that's the way you do with Zoom. You have to do it. You don't have the instructor there to carve your eye for you. You have to carve it yourself. And so look forward to taking, if you have never taken one, take one, because I've taken one from Dave Stetson, Ryan Olson, and Alec LaCase, and all of them are very good. So if you get a chance, do that. The wooden spool carving, I want to give you just a little history of it, because I have wooden spools, you know, how long have you been around? And since I've carved a lot of wooden spools, it started in 1812 in Scotland. And you could take a spool, and when you got done with it, you could take it back to where you got it for a deposit, just like a bottle, and then they would re-spool it and sell it again. And this Patrick and James Clark from Scotland in 1812, they started the spools in the mill factory that they were doing. And on a lot of your spools, if you look on the top, it's going to say, this one here says Coates and Clark, because the two companies combined. And there's another one that says J and J Coates and Clark, I mean. And so take a look at the top of them. You'll see some of them are embossed. It's like it's wood burned in the top. And those are some of the older ones. The first in the United States was 1820, is when the first factory came. And some people ask, you know, isn't that wood kind of hard? Yeah, it is. It's made, most of the spools are made out of ash, birch, alder, sycamore, or maple. But I tell people, you know, if you have a sharp tool, you're not removing a lot of wood. So it's really not that difficult if your tool is sharp, because you're not removing a whole bunch of wood compared to a large carving. So it's not bad at all. In the 1970s, as usual, money talks, and they started making plastic spools, which is cheaper, and that's when they stopped making the wooden spools. But if you'd like to see, there's a real good video out. It's called Victorian Bobbin Mill, and it has an old mill that was run by steam, and it shows you how they made the spools. And it was really good, interesting history. They talked about the people who drilled the holes in the top. They'd have so many wood chips that it would be up to their waist in chips, but they liked that because it was so cold in the basement that kept them warm. And so check that out if you're kind of a history person, you want to kind of find out a little bit more. There's kind of interesting information about spools. And how I got carving spools, the main thing is I've done a lot of what I call grandma spools. And the grandma spools are the ones that they are ones I use for like a necklace. And they look like this. And so they have the Santa Claus on the front, and then they have a cord and a bell on the bottom. And the part that I like about that is that their great grandma has come in contact with it, and they end up giving it to their granddaughters or their daughters. And lately, I've this one lady that I carved a few for called me up and said, "Oh, are you doing more? Are you still carving spools?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm still carving some." And so she says, "Could you do some more for me?" I said, "Sure." And she says, "How about 20? So I did 20 for her. And then about a week later, one of my students that I had a long time ago says, "Oh, I saw those spools. Would you carve some for me?" I said, "Sure." And so that was 18 of them. So I've carved quite a few of them. And but I guess I really enjoy doing those just because of the fact that sometimes somebody's going to cherish or, in contact with the grandma and grandpa or whatever. So it's a fun thing to do, and it doesn't take that long to do it, actually. So what I'm going to do now is kind of show you the stages for wood carving, the spools. And if they'll switch, I suppose, to the one, what I've done is I've mapped it out. And I don't know if you can, can you see that well enough, or is that, do I need to go up? Maybe if I go up there.
Yeah, that's good right there, Roger.
Yeah. And what I do is I put a center line down, and then I look at the edges, and I put a line, and this is about 2.5 inches wide. But the first thing you got to do is look and see where the growth lines are the closest. That's the side you pick to carve the face on. So you need to turn it around and see where the lines of the spool and the growth lines are the closest, and that's where you end up making the face. And so I'll put those down. And then the other thing I think it's good to have is there are dividers, because I'll take this, put it in the middle on the center line, and then go over to the edge and put a line, and then I'll do the same thing. And that way there, by using dividers, I use dividers a lot. If I'm doing eyes, I use a divider. If I'm trying to do another carving just like the other one, I'll use dividers. And so I use them a lot. And so then I'll make about 3/8 inch there, and about 5/8 of an inch there. And then I draw a holly on the back. And I'm lucky enough to have a wife that's an excellent wood burner, and she does all kinds of wood burning and gourds and things like that. So she does all the wood burning for me. And so that's the first stage. Is really pretty simple. And once you get that done, the next thing you need to do is, let's see, get that there, is find the center line again. I draw in the hair, and there's hair there. And then I go from that center point, because that's going to be the nose, I slant it to the edge right here. And what I usually use for that is a small gouge. Oops. Like this, about a quarter half inch gouge. And I'll use that to go and shave it on the side. And shave it up. And it goes about, I'd say, 1/8 of an inch deep. And that way there, you're setting up the foundation for the face. You know, like I always tell people, if you're going to build a house, you got to get the foundation. You can't put the windows and the doors and the garage, you know, garage door in. You got to do the foundation. And that's the same thing with all the carvings you do. Just do the foundation of the face first and then start working on the detail. And so this would be the second step, is to get to that point. Now, the next thing I want to show you is, this is what I use to carve the spools on. And the reason I use this is because I had a friend, and one day I came to the carving club and my hand was all bandaged up. And he said, "What happened to you?" And I said, "Well, I was carving a spool and it turned on me and I jammed about a ½ or ¼ gouge into my hand." And so he was an engineer for John Deere. And the next meeting, he came and had this. He says, "Hey, this is for you, so you don't cut yourself anymore." And I'll show you what basically, it's really been handy, because if you do small spools, you can put a couple of them on there, and it's real handy to hold on to. And it's got a little piece of rubber down here, and a washer on top, and then a wing nut on that. And so when I carve, I'll put the spools on here, and it just makes it a lot better as far as not slipping in your hand, and you can tighten it down really good. And so here's what, see that. Here's what I've done so far. Can you see that? All right, like.
Yeah, it looks good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, Roger, there's a question in the chat. Where do you acquire your spools large enough to carve?
What's the, pardon?
Where do you, yeah, go ahead. Where do you purchase the spools that are large enough to carve?
Oh, you can, if you go on Google, there's all kinds of spools for sale, because I was just curious myself. And so I Googled wooden spools, and there was a whole bunch that was for sale. So you can do it that way. But another good place is like Goodwill, some of these places where they have, it's kind of a thrift store. A lot of times they'll have just old spools, and you can get them pretty cheap. So thrift stores or Goodwill is a good place to get them. And the ones that I have, you can, another thing you can do, like here's a one that's, another thing you can do, you can put eyes in them if you want, or lately I've been doing ones where I end up just putting a kind of a squinty eye into it, where you just make a slit, and it's always happy. And so that's basically, you can have a, I'll show you another one. Now here's another one. You can have somebody make you a spool, but what I do is I'll have this one, but if you look at it, it looks like a real old spool because it got the label on it. And people say, "Geez, where did you get that big spool?" And I said, "Oh, you can find them around." But then I tell them I had somebody turn it, and then you take the label, enlarge the label, and stick that on. And so that's another way you can get any size spool you want, is if you know somebody that's a turner, you can get it done that way. The first thing I'll do with this, and I think I can, I use knives for small stuff that I can fit in my hand like this. And so when I'm carving, I'm real close to what I'm working on. And that way I've got, if I use a bigger spool, I'll use a bigger knife, but I use this type of a knife a lot just because I have a lot of control because it's real close. And then here's another one that I just like how it fits in your hand, and that way there you have a lot of control. So what I'm going to start with is I'm going to try and match to see. Is that good for you or not?
That looks good, Roger.
Okay, so I'm going to match this side. I'm going to take this side here and match it with this. And usually what I do is I take a cut down and try to make a pretty horizontal opening and not real slanted or acute. If you make it too slanted, you can't get the eye in there. And so I'm just now trying to open that up so that I can get the eye in there. And then I'll go back and mark it. And let's see. I'll take and mark where I want the nose again. And I try to make a wide nose. I've seen too many of them that are just really almost like a pencil-shaped nose. And for Santa Clauses, you want a wide nose. And so I'll come down there and then I'll take my knife and make a stop cut in that. Let's see. Make a stop cut in right along there. And then I'll come back and cut that out. And then go deeper in the corner and try and go vertical. And then angle it back. And now I'll always, one thing that PJ told me, he said that you always want to make, with a Santa Claus, you always want to make a scoopy nose. You know, like for all of you, I'm sure you know Bob Hope. And so you make kind of a Bob Hope nose. You always want to curl it, take your knife and curl it so that it's a scoopy nose. And that will help the looks of your Santa Clauses if you do that. The other thing that's important when you're carving on these is you have to decide if you want the mustache to curl up or curl down. And if you want it to look happy, you always turn the mustache up. If you want it to look sad or angry, I always think it's down is making it not quite as happy. But you can still make it look happy if you put the mustache down. Harold Inlow said there's like 3 things you can do for expression. You got the mouth, you got the eyes, and you got the eyebrows. And if you can work with those, then that's where you're going to get your expression from. And those are some really good, some of his early books are really good. Because if you read the front part of them, he goes a lot with expression and explaining how to do that. That's a good book. So I'll put that in with pencil and come down here. And I'll probably just, again, make it so that it goes up.
Hey, Roger, there's a question in the chat. Do you ever use
Sure.
alcohol water solution to soften the wood?
You could. I never have. I think that would help if you use the alcohol water. But I've just never seen the need for it, I guess. If your tools are sharp, since like on this one here, I'll take a V tool and V tool a little track for the mustache. You can see. So I'll take a small V tool and make a track where I'll make a stop cut And some spools are harder than others. You know, it's just because they're probably older, and it depends on where they've been stored. So, and I think that's the other thing. If you find it really too hard, then try. I think the alcohol in the water would work. And then I'll just go along with make a stop cut and make a stop cut up here, right where I did the V tool, and come back around and make a stop cut. And the thing with stop cuts, again, I use them a lot, and it helps. And also, if you use like a push cut, I think sometimes that helps a lot too, compared to maybe a paring cut, but it's maybe a little safer. I'm not used to the carving where, you know, I try, and hopefully, you know, with wearing the glove and everything, these aren't, as you can see, I'm really not putting a lot of pressure on that to get the wood off. So it's again, it's when I first bought my first carving tools in the 80s. Well, guess what? You buy this set of tools, and back in the 80s, they weren't sharpened like they are now. And so I had to learn how to sharpen, so, which actually was a good deal, because back then there wasn't any YouTube, and there wasn't any, all I had was books. And so I got some really good books on sharpening. And as I tell people, you actually should learn how to sharpen before you learn how to carve, because you're going to have to be sharpening your tools all the time. And it's really, really important to have sharp tools. So you can see that it doesn't take a lot of effort for me to carve that wood off that to make the mustache stand out. And then I'll see if I can get that, trying to get it so it's, and then I'm just taking and cutting the cheeks down a little bit. I hope you can see this, I can't tell. And then I'll put the mouth in just by making a stop cut in here. And then just taking that little triangle out. And then I'll just take a V tool or a little gouge and make the bottom of the lip. And so I'll just take this. And the other thing I think is important, and I know everybody knows this, but if you're a beginning carver, probably the most important thing is to have your thumb anchor on the wood. So when you're carving, you have a lot more control if you use your thumb. And you can see how close I am to the point of it. See how close I am to the point of the tool. And putting your thumb on the carving gives you a lot more control. So keep that in mind. If you're a beginning carver and you haven't done that or thought about it, that's a really important thing to help keep you from getting cut, or because that gives you more control over your tool. Now, the next thing I'll do, can you see that good? I'll take a number, I use a lot of Stubai number 11. I use those a lot for hair, and I've got everything from 2 millimeters up to 7 millimeters, and then I've got some bigger than that. but I use those a lot to do the hair. It compared to a V tool, if you're doing Santa Clauses, the gouges will be softer and compared to the V tool. So if you're doing Santa Clauses, I advise you to get some like number 11s, some Stubai. I've had those for years, and they keep their edge, and they are a very sturdy tool. So now I'm just working on the eyebrows. Let's see, I gotta check something here. There. So this is what I've got so far. I've got the other thing that I think is important that sometimes a lot of people don't do is a temple. This part right here, right by the eye, and it goes up where you come in and make a little. Some people you can use a gouge. I just happen to use a knife just because I usually have a knife in my hand. And what that does when you put that temple in, it brings the cheeks out and just gives the shape of the face so much better. You can tell it when somebody doesn't do that. The shape of the, like, compare the one side, I don't know if you can see the one side to the other side that hasn't been done. And so either a gouge or a knife can come in there and make a slice up to make an indentation so that you put in the temples. And so when you do that, can you see that? I can't tell if you can, but that does make a big difference when you put the temples in. And the next thing, I end up probably putting the eyes in last, or close to being last. But on these, what I'll do next is, once I get the mouth in and get the foundation in, I'll try and get the rest of it set up. So now all I have to do is use the gouges for the beard, the mustache, and the hair, and I'll use a V tool for the eyebrows. Next thing we need to do is, you can see how this is higher than this, and then we got to lower this part right here. So what I want to do is come over this other side, and I've already taken a V tool and ran the V tool down here, and then I'm going to come across here with a stop cut and a stop cut, and I'll take my knife and just take a slice out of there. You can see I'm not putting a lot of pressure on it to get that chunk out. And then I'll come back and cut it up like that with a paring cut. And this is where I'll put a red color, so I add some color to it. And I'll show you when so that's what I do there. And then I need to clean this up right here so that when you paint it, you won't be different than the rest of the surface. So I'll just take my knife and clean that up. And so right now, I'm going to do the hair, and then the last thing on the face, I'll do the eyes. And I could do those with the eyes. See, can you see that good there? I think it's hard to tell. I take a number 2 2mm number 11, go deep in the corner, and then take it and go deeper on the side, so that there's a high point right in the middle of the eye. There's a high point right there. And so I'll do the same thing and try and get them even. So I'll just take it and go deeper there, and then go deeper on the side. So again, the high point is in the middle of the eye. And then I tell people, if you have a tough time doing eyes, this is probably the easiest eye for Santa Claus, and it's also probably one of the one that's going to make it look like it's happy. And so I just take my knife, make a stop cut, and then make another stop cut coming down here, and then turn it around and take a little slice out of that, and then take another slice out of it coming the other way. And another thing, you gotta be careful, but once you get that cut, you can take your knife and just kind of wiggle it in that space, and it's going to make that space a little bit bigger. And so with this eye like this, you can see that it always gives you a happy face. And it doesn't take a long time. When you're doing 20 spools at a time, you don't have time to put an eye in, but you can put these in, and they always are happy. So you cut one way, and come back and take a slice out. If it doesn't come out clean, just go back in. And you can also take a little thicker bladed knife and stick it in there and wiggle it, and that'll give you a little bit bigger space too, because these are fairly thin. So there's the eye, and then I'll take that small 1/8 of an inch V tool and give it eye bags. Can you see that? And I think with Santa Claus's, eye bags are important to put in. And then the other part that's important is you can get a few smile lines on the side. That helps with the expression also by putting in the smile lines. And now I'm just going to do the eyebrows with a V tool. And these are not. Now I can also go back in, if I'm gonna put that top eyelid in, I can go in with this small 1/8 of an inch V tool and put in an upper eyelid. And that's why you want to make that opening more obtuse. So you want to make it more straight up and down, and you can, then you have more space to put that in. And now I'll take the gouge, and I've got a 5mm gouge that I'm going to use. Let's see if we can get this. And one thing that Harold Inlow said, you never have any straight lines. You always want to be S's and C's. And the other thing he said, treat it like you're on a highway. You're going down the highway, and then you end up going across and you change lanes and go into another lane. So think about driving, you make a curvy space, and you can make it like a basic foundation for these, your major curl areas or major hair areas. You can go in like this and then come back and go across those lines, so you don't have them just all parallel either, because you don't want that. Even though you've got them curved, you don't want them parallel. And so you can do that by coming back with a smaller tool, like this is a 2mm. You can come back and break up and cross over and not have any flat lines. And so hopefully you can. I'm just coming across. Again, my thumb is anchoring, so that makes it a lot easier that I don't go too far with the tool and go right up into the mouth or the. And you can always, I think sometimes people don't spend enough time on the mustache and the beard. It's especially for Santa Claus, it's probably one of the most important parts. So take some time to break things up and go across and make some deeper than others. Don't make them all the same depth. You can also, once you think you got it where you want it, you can go in there and take a small V tool or a knife, either one, and make some little deeper cuts. Again, just to give it more definition. And so if you can see that, but by doing that, you can get the major lines, and then after that, go in and break everything up so that you don't have all parallel lines. You don't have them all the same depth. And then with the mustache, I just use the 2mm, number 11. Then get some ink marks off. I always put in nostrils, and I just use a number 11. Put nostrils in. And then for the hair up here, I'll do the same thing. I'll come down with a 2mm. And I always put hair with the Santa Claus up above. It just, for me, it makes it look better to have the hair coming out of the hat compared to not having any hair up there. In fact, today I had my hat on, and they said, "But geez, I can't see your face." I said, "That's good." But some people don't even recognize me when I don't have a hat on. One time I was down at Carvers, and Larry Udis was sitting there, and I didn't have my hat on. And I said, "Geez, I don't even recognize you. I don't know who you are." So that was a thing that I can probably get away with a lot of things if I don't wear my hat, because nobody knows who I am. Okay, so now I got the face where they're basically done. And then I'll take a gouge, and this is another number 11. It's actually one that's an Enlow made, and it's great. It's a great tool. I mean, it just so fits in your hand so well on the angle of it, and it's got a bent. And so I'll take this, and all I'm doing is just trying to make it look like fur, or just to break it up so it's not like the rest of it. And you can see, I'm just, again, if you have a tool that's sharp, it doesn't take a lot of pressure. And I'm just using my thumb again, and just coming back and roughing it up. Let's do that. And do the same thing on the other side. And I've done some without this too. I've done them a variety of ways, but I always end up coming back to this way. It seems that people like it, and so I have made. I never counted how many spools I've done, but you know, I like to carve a lot of different things, and that's why I said, you know, anything that's got wood, I like to try or to carve it. And I don't mind making more than one of something. You know, it's like I've done those spools. I guess like a lot of you, I enjoy being able to take a knife and a piece of wood and make something out of it. I'm not a professional or anything like that, but I just like having that ability. Since I always have been a person that can't sit and do nothing. Always have to be doing something. And I tell you, since I'd always carve at night after our kids went to bed. And now that I retired, I can't imagine what people do if they don't have a hobby or a purpose, because this gives me a good purpose. I enjoy learning. That's why I've taken all those classes. And so next thing I would do would be to basically take a brush and clean this up and get ready to paint it. And with painting, since it's a little denser wood, I water it down, but probably not as much as I do on basswood. And I'll show you what I use for painting. I use two things, but if I'm only going to do a few, I'll put some paint, just little drops of paint on this, put some water in the middle, and use this if I'm just doing a couple of them, but that's very seldom. I carve, I'm sure like a lot of you, I carve a whole bunch until I can't, think I'll never get through painting them. But when I have a lot to paint, I use this, it's a deviled egg container. And so I'll just take some of the paint and put a couple drops of paint in there, and then add the rest water. And when you do that, I can use that because it's got a cover on it. I'll cover it up, come back the next day. And that way there, you're pretty consistent in colors because you've had it from the day before, and that makes it pretty consistent. So I do this a lot if I'm painting a lot of figures, and because I use it, it's more like a stain. And when you put the paint in here, and if you try it on your test piece of wood, and you think, oh, it's too dark, you can add a little more water. If it's not dark enough, you can add some more paint or put another layer on. But for me, when I'm carving a lot, this works great if you can save the paint, and you can use it for about a week because it never dries up. And you can always add water to it. I paint these, if it's a necklace, one of these, after I paint it, not there. After I paint it, for the necklaces, I use Howard's Feed and Wax because it's a nice smelling material. And then if I were to use linseed oil, it may have an odor to it. And so I put a bell on the bottom of it and some beads on the top and just use red ribbon. And if I'm gonna do like these, show you these bigger spools, I'll put some linseed oil on those, and then I'll mostly dry brush the beards. A lot of Santa Clauses, I'll dry brush the beards. I'll put some yellow and maybe some burnt sienna, and then I'll use the linseed oil on them. And then after that, I'll use some Howard's Feed and Wax. But it's always fun to have somebody turn some of these for you, and because people will say, "Gee, where'd you get that big spool?" Here's another different size spool. And done the same way, but just, and this is, I guess I wanted to show you. When you look at the eyes, those little simple eyes, and the way you turn the mustache is another thing. You can see how this mustache is turned up. That gives it a different expression, and compared to just being flat. And so having what you do with the mustache or the mouth, even though, you know, it's beard, you can make it look different compared to this one. Or this guy here. So the eyes, again, and the mouth make a big differences of what you're gonna get for an expression. Here's a, oops. Here's a real small spool. And what I do with these sometimes is I'll cut them in half and put make earrings out of them. But it's on a screw with some wimp wrap around it. And so that's another spool. Then there's you can do faces like this. It's more like a wood spirit instead of like a Santa Claus. These are some really old spools. They're really hard, and they say if you find one that looks like an axle, there's some of the older industrial spools. Let's see. Any questions on the spools? And then I'll show you some of the other stuff I carved that's made out of wood.
Hey, Roger, I had a question. This is Richard Holden.
Yeah.
It looks to me that your technique in carving the spools is the same that you use with your birchwood carvings. Is that true? And you
That's
know
exactly right.
Carvings.
Yep. I don't, let's see, I don't only birch one. I do a lot of ornaments made out of birch, and it carves really well, and I like the wood. And I had a neighbor's tree fall down, and I went, "Hey, can I have some wood?" "Yeah, take all you want." So I've got a couple barrels out in the garage of birch, but I'll cut them with a slant at the top and slant at the bottom, and then I'll do like a holly on top, and then carve a Santa Claus face. But yes, you're exactly right. It's the same technique as I use for covering on the birch. Here's a piece of birch here that is just a small piece of birch, but it's basically done the same way. You know, when carving, the thing is, many times when you first begin, yeah, a lot of times there's flatter faces. Well, if you always use that center line as your high point and then angle everything back from that, that's going to help you a lot. But I do, yeah, you're right. I do a lot of those birch ornaments. And this, I'll show you another done the same way. This is and I do this is what I do with the birch. I'll slant the top and put that on top. Then I'll do the Santa face, and then I slant the bottom. And I'll usually put my name on the back here. But this is what I call ditch willow. And people will say, oh, what kind of willow is that? I said, ditch willow. Well, where do you get that? In a ditch. And so, yeah, you can go to all kinds of ditch, around sloughs and marshes, and there's all kinds of willow. But this one here, I just painted and then put some linseed oil on it, and then put some Howard's bean wax.
Sorry, Roger.
Yeah.
Do you carve them green or do you let them dry first?
Do I what?
Do you carve them green when they're still wet, or do you let them dry?
One more time. I can get.
Do you let the timber dry out? Do you let the piece of timber dry out fully before you carve it?
You let it dry out completely before you carve it.
No, I carved it wet, and the stuff that's in the barrel in the garage has been there for 8 years.
Ah, thank you.
Probably more than that. And so it's a lot of it's really dry, but I've carved it when it was wet. In fact, it really carves easy when it's wet. And so the willow the same way. I carved that wet, and you can what time is it? I'll show you some of the stuff that I've carved. You can ask questions too, but here's some of the other things. I don't know if you want to go from the top one or the bottom. Okay, this is a deal for mixing up something, pudding or whatever, but it's one that's you can find in a lot of the antique places and stores, and so that's I enjoy doing that. I'll show you. Here's the monster mash. You've all heard of the monster mash, right? You're at that age, and so this is a masher, and with the Frankenstein type of face on it, called the monster mash. And that carves really easy. That carves easy too. And I suspect I looked it up, and I think it's also real similar to what's in the spools. Here's a Santa Claus on a masher. I made a chef on a masher. Here's another. I think it chops up stuff, but I made another Frankenstein on that. Here's a talk about a masher. Here's the guy's face, but here's the masher. It's about a foot long. So you can find all kinds of unusual things to carve on. Another thing.
I got to ask, can you give us a close-up of that knife?
These work good for holding Christmas cards. It's a pastry deal. And you could carve a face on the front, and then you can put the cards in the slots. That works out well. Here's something I think for making donuts or something. And And that carved pretty easy. It's amazing. Here's a let's see, paintbrush with an Indian on it. A little thimble. There. What else? Oh, I'm going to do an article about these. It's a shaving brush, the old type where you use the mug and stuff. And so that's. Let me see, a couple more things. You've all probably done softballs. This is a softball. It has to say polycore, but if you carve on these, you have a buffer close to you because for some, whatever's in there, it'll dull your tools. And so then, but if you buff them, then you can keep on carving. And I just did that because I saw that in the magazine. I'm trying to think of her name who did that, but if you can go to some of the craft stores, you can get these wooden bracelets and carve on them. And that's just another thing. Spoons. One time, Walmart had a whole bunch of basswood spools, spoons, and they were great because it's only like $1.50, and they don't have them anymore. They're all made out of bamboo or something. But,
Hey, Roger, Jack Harris wants to know if you've ever carved wooden rolling pins.
I do have some rolling pins, but they're basswood. The real ones, I think I'd have to use power. Here's one that I've done. It's a one that's actually basswood. That's I had it made. I can't remember where I got it, but I've done Santa Clauses and other things and stuff like that. The couple other things people like for planters and stuff like that, in their house or in their garden. This is a fork. It cost me 50 cents, and I carved a little gnome on it, and that carved pretty decent. At Christmas time, you can have one of these, and it's got a Santa Claus face on it, and stick it in a candy bowl and go from there. But it's always, when you go to these stores and look for all these wooden things, it's just kind of fun to see what you can come up with when you're carving, because it's something different, and that's what I like to do, is do something different as far as carving. And other than that, you have any other questions? I can show you my collection downstairs if you'd like. So
Roger, one other question from the chat. Somebody was asking again if you could go back through the painting on the spools. Does it take it similar to basswood, or you said you had to paint heavier?
Yeah, I painted heavier, just because the wood is more dense, and therefore it doesn't soak up, as much, and so a lot of times by just making just a little more paint, it works better that way compared to water it way down. Then you'd have to put a lot of coats on because the density of the wood doesn't absorb the water as fast as like basswood would, because it's a lot more porous.
Okay, any other questions for Roger today?
Hey, I was wondering,
Roger,
if you showed that blade cover on that purple knife on your table. I assume you carved that.
The purple knife? This one?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I here, I a long time ago did an article with the Woodcarving Illustrated on making these blade covers, and so then I got a blade from Mike Shipley, and this is that plastic. It's like acrylic, and you can get it. Wood turners use it for making pins and stuff like that. And so I guess you can cut it real easy and sand it, and I've made a lot of knives out of stuff like this, and with the blade covers. And these are made out of spalls of hackberry. And so I just like having I use the bigger knives also, but I use these if I'm working on something small, and I shape them to fit my hand. And I got some good steel from Bruce Ankeny, has some also from it's called Momax steel. I got it from Mar Kaiserset. He said he'd had some, and it makes really good knives. And I've made some out of old bandsaw blades. I had a guy give me some that they were probably power hacksaw blades for cutoff. And they were probably from the 60s, and they have really good steel. And so I've made some from those too.
All right, Roger. Well, it's 15 after 4. I'm going to have to stop you here so that we go ahead and wrap up. I just want to say thank you for coming on and sharing your talents with us. Quite a few things there that maybe people haven't thought about carving. So make sure if you want to do something unique, look for those unique things out when you're out shopping at antique stores or thrift stores or something like that, and give it a try. Looks like it's a lot of fun. Just want to remind you all that the bid is still open for the Helvie knife. I want to thank Helvie again for donating that knife. I'll show it to you one more time. Right now, the bid's at $325. If you're interested in bidding on that, make sure you do that now. Again, we're including the sheath that comes along with that. Rich told me just a couple of days ago that they're going to stop including sheaths with knives, so you won't be able to get sheaths very much longer from Helvie. Again, if you're interested in this, bid on it now. I want to let you all know what is coming up for us. Next week, we've got Ray Meyer that's going to be coming on with us. A new person that we just signed up this week, Cam Merkel's going to be coming on from Razor Tip, which is the wood burner company. He's going to be coming on with us on the 26th of March. Steve Tomaszek's going to be April the 2nd. Joe Yu, CCA member, is going to be on April the 9th. Chris Hammock's going to be on April the 16th. Brett Andrews on April the 23rd. Cecilia Schiller from the Crank Lady is going to be on April the 30th. And then Dana from Carving Junkies is going to be on May the 14th. So we've got quite the lineup heading into May. Make sure you tune in with us every week, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, to join us live on these meetings. And again, we put these out usually late on Saturday night or Sunday morning on YouTube. So if you missed the live show, you can always come back and watch the video. We'll go ahead and close the auction now for the knife. Peg, if you'll stay on, we'll gather your information. Just want to say thanks again for coming on with us today. This is the International Association of Woodcarvers, where carvers are helping carvers, and we'll be back next Saturday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Goodbye.